You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we're back here for another one as day 2 of joint practice between the Texans and the Dolphins wrapped up earlier today. We're going to go over all that, plus a few other things. Neal, how are you feeling as we are only, now 2 days away from the second preseason game, which is an odd one because it's at like 4 p.m. Eastern. Usually they're night games in the preseason. I don't know what's going on, but how you feeling heading into the second preseason game?
Skip the rest of the preseason. Let's get right to the regular season. I'm tired of these freaking injuries stressing me out, man. I'm tired of having my stomach in my throat, whether it's Ramsey, Waddle, Terron Armstead today. I just, man, the preseason to me, I understand it's conditioning and you got to get up to speed. It just drives me crazy. For me, vets can have all for the rest of the preseason. Let's see what the young guys fight it out. But man, I get terrified just seeing, some of these guys go down. But we do have a preseason game 2 days away. So, but yeah, man, we'll hopefully just good mojo starts attacking this team rather than all the freaking injury bugs and stuff we've been battling.
And just a reminder, guys, as you all come in here, tomorrow I'll be live at 5 p.m. with former NFL quarterback J.T. O'Sullivan of the quarterback school, and we'll be talking about Tua Tagovailoa, Skylar Thompson, Mike White, the Dolphins quarterback room, his expectations of them this season, and we'll be discussing a few of the narratives out there. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. Over 200 of you in the room already. Please smash that like button and subscribe if you're new. So let's start off with the big news of the day before we get into some house cleaning things and such. But before we even do all that, D Hugga all day uses his membership to the channel of 29 months. He's been a member for 2.5 years now of the channel. And he says, if we cannot re-sign Wilkins, can we please trade him for some real O-linemen? Greer's starting to annoy me with this O-line. Knight says this is the type of practice we should be having, obviously minus the injuries. And thanks for the chat earlier in the space. Fins up. All right, so let's get into all this. And let's start off with, obviously, the biggest news of the day. That, of course, being the injury to Terron Armstead. And he was actually carted off at one point. But Dolphins left tackle Terron Armstead sustained an apparent right leg injury during joint practice with the Texans Thursday morning and was taken off on a cart. The injury occurred on the very first play of 11-11 drills after a run by Raheem Mostert along the side of Armstead. He fell to the ground and was hobbled as he got back to his feet. Armstead limped to the sideline and sat on a table underneath a tent, taking off his jersey, shoulder pads, and right shoe. He spent several minutes on the table, at one point speaking with general manager Chris Grier, and then made his way onto the cart. Armstead didn't put any weight on his right leg while stepping onto the cart. About an hour after Armstead left practice on a cart, he posted a video on social media of himself walking inside the Texans facility. This is said video. You can see him walking, saying thanks for the love and support. So he's walking. Armstead was later seen using crutches to get onto the back of the cart where he was taken to the Dolphins' belongings. He told NFL Network, "I'll be good," and is expected to get an MRI to determine the severity of his injury. Tyreek said, Terron's a huge part of the team. I feel like he's more important than I am because of the left side. We need someone to really hold down that side just to see him go down, which I think is not serious. I'm sure he'll shake back. He'll be straight. As soon as it happened, I went up to him and said, "You straight?" And he said, "I'm straight, man. I'm just old." Armstead, 32, spent the first 6 days of training camp on the PUP list because of an offseason knee procedure. Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel called it cleanup work and is not clear which knee underwent the procedure. So let's hope, Neal, it's not the same leg. Armstead's participation in the first month of camp has been very limited, with just a few team drill snaps, if any, each practice. And he's told reporters he's working his way back into getting ready. So, Neal, I mean, whether he's good or not, this kind of highlights the thing we've been talking about. Well, I've been preaching on this channel for 3 years that this offense will go as far as the offensive line takes them. And now we're into the second year of this. We expect injuries with the guy. This is what we signed up for when we gave him that money. This just highlights a deeper seated issue in terms of the depth issue. But here's the thing. People can play the Chris Greer clip all they want, Neal, about all of us being worried about injuries more than than they are. And yet you talk to people privately connected to the team. They love Kendall Lamb. They love Robert Jones. They love Lester Cotton. Hell, they love, things they've seen from Keon Smith. And I know they love Robert Jones. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are more comfortable with their own line depth than all of us are. And this is just a reminder, Neal, that at some point this O-line depth is going to be tested this year.
Yeah, no, it is, and I think you actually nailed it perfectly in the on your tweet where you kind of called out the topic where you said the Dolphins dodged a bullet, or did they? Like, it looks like he'll be okay for now, but I think that he'll be battling injuries off and on all season. And when you have the offensive line like the Miami Dolphins, for me, it's Tua, Tyreek, and Terron Armstead are the three guys that I don't think we can afford to lose.
Yeah, I agree.
Even Waddle, Jaelan Phillips, I think there will be significant losses if that happened, but I think we could move forward, just like we did with Jalen Ramsey. Tua, Armstead, and Tyreek are just too important to this team to go down. And, I've learned this. The cart coming out, that doesn't mean anything anymore.
Nothing, yeah.
The players saying they're okay doesn't mean anything anymore. It all comes down to that damn MRI, right? And, like, the thing I'll say is it feels like we dodged a bullet, but I'm not sure yet. And I'm not going to, count my blood, count the chickens before they hatch here. I'm still a little bit nervous that MRI could show some damage because he's often injured. And while healthy, he's elite. No doubt about it. But I do think that there's a bigger problem here that if he battles injuries off and on like this all season, right? And this is another season where he plays 13 games or something, or 12 games, you have to be cognizant. The biggest need for this football team right now, to me, if you go into next year's draft and we jump ahead to March, is offensive tackle, because Austin Jackson's an expiring contract and he has questions anyway. You need a guy who's going to come in there and play right tackle that you can groom to be your left tackle eventually. So I would say we dodged a bullet for now based off of what it looks like with Armstead walking, but he's also not a doctor. But the offensive line, I think, is just going to be the gift that keeps giving, where, we're going to be battling this. Like you said, there's a lot of players they like. They probably have more overall depth than they're accustomed to, but, it just seems like they're not always healthy together. And because of that, they don't get the full opportunity to really gel and work together. It does make me feel very happy to have a guy like Isaiah Wynn under contract, where he could be a starting left guard, but he might be just our best option at left tackle as well.
So, D-Hugga said something earlier that me and you were even talking about before we went live. I don't think this whole Reisner narrative people are trying to spread, I don't think that's happening. Butch Barry tried to install this outside blocking zone scheme, and from what I understand, he was one of the guys there that didn't like it, and he actually struggled last year. So just by deduction, I believe he's probably one of the guys that wasn't a fan of Butch Barry last year. Fangio's staff drafted Reisner when he came out as well. Neither one of those guys have gone to bat for him. D-Hugga broached the subject. We talked about it, and the example I brought up to you. So do you look at a guy like Ogba, a guy like Ogba, who they're strictly standing up? They have no interest putting his hand in the dirt, it seems, even with Christian Wilkins out and the snaps are there. Do you pay him to be a $15 million backup stand-up edge rusher, or do you see if you can try and trade him? And, I'm sure people aren't going to like what I'm going to say, but I'm sure there's a high-end backup you could find out there that's worthy of getting first-team reps, considering what we have with our offensive line. Would trade it seems like that might be our best option if we are really to upgrade this offensive line. Trade seems like the best option. No, but even still, Neal, we're into the middle of August. Offensive linemen are at a premium as we're heading into only 3 weeks away from the regular season.
Yeah, if they're experimenting with Agba and not letting him play the position that got him that contract, to me, I don't understand it. And I do think that if there was an ability to trade him for a resource, that Miami should definitely look at it. I asked myself, how much of an upgrade is Agba to even like a Deshaun Hand? I mean, he's a better player, but how much? But yeah, I don't know. I think Agba's one of his best strengths is how good he is against the run on the defensive line with his hand in the dirt and his ability to kind of call some pressure with his hand in the dirt. And, we know about the bad it passes. Maybe it's just more experimenting. They already know what they have with him in his hand is dirt. That's the only thing I could hope here. But it is an interesting thing that, even with Wilkins not even practicing right now, that he's still lining up a lot, as a stand-up outside linebacker. That's interesting to me. What does that say about our depth? Because I'll say this: he's still available, and he had a good year here. I'd love to have Melvin Ingram on this team. If we have cap space to spend, why not bring him back for 1 year, $3 million?
Yeah, and I mean, this could be a reason why a guy like Mitchell Agudia, even with how much he's standing out, why he's not really getting a serious look. Or I've heard the top 3 UDFAs leading the charge to potentially make this team are Brandon Pilley, Keydron Smith, and Aubrey Miller. And we know how good Mitchell Agudia is, but we're so stacked at edge rushers. But to be honest with you, move Agba and give that spot to Mitchell Agudia. Groom the young kid who's flashing, standing up. Because I've heard even as Agba's been standing up, Neal, he's been super quiet. He's not been very impactful. He's not making very much noise coming off that edge right now. And our offensive line, my friend, I mean, Armstead's 32. And here's another thing, Neal. I know you've heard about it. Connor Williams has quietly been struggling too, right?
Right. Well, I think there's a lot there to what you said. First of all, I think there's a very real possibility that Terron Armstead, if he battles injuries this year, it could be his last year here. He's a post-June guy that would save you $15 million in cap space. So, it's not beyond, the imagination to think that if he battles injuries all season again, that Miami could move on. Not saying that I want that to happen. I said just kind of have that there. And I think you're right, man. Emmanuel Agba, we paid him to be a foundational, upper echelon, face of the franchise type of player, right? Like, he this is his last year in Miami, no matter what happens, right? I think you would agree with that. If that's the case and you have young guys, why would you prevent them from playing? Like the way I look at it, if Agba's your standing up outside linebacker, he costs 5 times what it cost you to have Melvin Ingram last year. Like, why would you not go make that move? I hope, again, that they're just doing that because, those guys you mentioned, our roster's deep. I honestly, I think, depending on his injury today, Brandon Pilley has the best opportunity of any of the undrafted free agents to make it. I think Miller, I think Mitchell, and I think Smith and Chris Brooks, I think, are all going to be practice squad guys that have the ability to get poached. Like, don't get me wrong. They're going to have people that are probably interested in them, but it's interesting, man. I'll say this overall about the Dolphins. We entered the training camp time with a ton of positive buzz and a ton of momentum. Everything went well, right? We had the Ramsey injury to happen. We have this Armstead. I feel, in a sense, that there's a small black cloud a little bit over the team right now. And I think that's a really important, situation where Chris Greer can make a move to eliminate that. I think you got to go sign Christian Wilkins to get it done now. He's not practicing. He's obviously missed when he's not out there. He's holding in. I know that's a new popular term. If you're just a few $1 million here and apart, give him the $60 million guarantee that it takes to get him done and get it done, right? That will not only just help this team this year, but it's going to help them in years to come when they have Jaelan Phillips and Jalen Waddles and guys of their own that are looking for new contracts. do right by the people you've drafted and developed, right? But then go make a move. Go make, you have this cap space. The Wilkins move will probably free you up, put you in the $17 million in cap space range. That money, honestly, does you no good carrying over except help you with the salary cap ramifications. This team's ready to compete. Go find me a starting quality offensive lineman that has versatility that eliminates any of this doubt. I don't even care if that means Isaiah Wynn goes to the bench and is more of a depth guy. Go get me a bona fide starter. If you have to trade draft resources, do it. If you have to package draft resources and players, I don't want this offensive line to do two things: impede this offense's growth and risk Tua Tagovailoa. If we see that again this year, and I'm a big believer, I've been supporting Chris Greer on the timeline all week, right? I've been doing the good work out there, but you can only say that you're not worried about the offensive line and that clip and all. That has the opportunity to blow up on you if you don't address it. So it's crucial that we figure out a way to get a quality offensive line. I don't expect them to be the Washington Redskin Hogs from the 70s or the Larry Little, Dwight Stevenson, interior that the Dolphins had. But the part that you mentioned that scares me the most is Connor Williams struggling, because I've heard a lot of that too. I've actually heard that Dan Feeney looked better than him. First of all, I'm glad we didn't pay him. And second of all, it's really interesting to see, will the Dolphins play the best 5 players who've earned those positions, or will they kind of be a little bit stubborn and go with the line that they want? You know what I mean? The Liam Eichenbergs and the Austin Jacksons. That's going to be an interesting dynamic to see for me.
An interesting thing to come out today too, before we get into the video highlights and training camp recap. Before we went live here, it had only been out for about 10 minutes. Interesting name came in for a visit. The Dolphins brought in veteran Bryce Callahan for a free agent visit. I love this because this is a guy who he's familiar with playing, the slot, that nickel role. And, he's played with Fangio in a few different places, right? He was with him. If I remember correctly, he was with him in Denver, right? And he was also with him in Chicago.
Right.
So this is a guy who he's very experienced. This is a name who I originally threw out there when Ramsey went down, that when they're looking for some cornerback depth, they brought him in for a visit. What were your thoughts on this, Neal? Because this is a good move, I think, if they make it.
Oh, absolutely. I look at our timeline and I see people saying, "Oh, why would they look at another corner?" Like, man, everything that we do has some kind of negative context around it. Like, Bryce Callahan is a Pro Bowl caliber cornerback.
And Nick Needham's not back. Who's your second slot guy behind Cater right now?
And I'll be blunt. Bryce Callahan, ever since Nick Needham's been in the league, right, has been a better player every year. Like, I don't feel Nick Needham's close to ready, man. I don't. Like, where is he? You know what I mean? Like, Ramsey, this is a great move. And I'm guessing it's going to be pretty economical as well. I'll say this. They took Eli Apple for $1.6 million, and honestly, that looks like money well spent. If he's on this roster and he's one of the 6 corners with his experience, I think it's a no-brainer. What this tells me is you could probably sign Bryce Callahan for the contract that you have Keon Carlson for, and if you can do that, why the hell would you not? That, when I talk about upgrades, that's taking a guy that's a 2 or a 3 and you go get a 6. Why would you not make it? I think it's a great move. I think it's savvy. Why not have the best secondary in the NFL? Why, you know what I mean? Why not go and make that move? I hope they sign him. I hope tonight when I get off of this that I see a 1-year deal for Bryce Callahan come across the ticker, because I think people are, a lot of people probably don't know him because he's not a household name, but he's an instant upgrade. He's familiar with the Fangio system. He's versatile. He has inside and outside ability. I mean, he's a really, really good player. I actually saw, I forget what player it was. Somebody said earlier today, they don't understand why he's on the market because he's an elite corner. I'm going to look for it while we're on here. I literally saw it this morning.
Yeah. Dude, I thought I thought we would have actually made that move a while ago, to be honest with you.
Over Eli Apple. I thought that was the move over Eli Apple.
So did I.
Oh, here it is, by the way. It's Kyle Van Noy who said this, our old friend. And here's what he said. I'm shocked no corner needy team has picked up Bryce Callahan. I feel like folks don't watch film like that. Buddy was an elite star last year and battled out an injury all season. His toughness, IQ, and tackling would help so many teams. He's a ball player.
Yeah.
Like, that would, honestly, that's another type of move that would get me excited.
It's a good move because it's also, again, this makes me wonder how far along is Needham, bro.
That and also don't let a couple interceptions in practice automatically make you think that Noah Igbenogany is already a Pro Bowl type player.
Exactly.
It's all about competition.
It's
all about competition, man. And at the end of the year, you're going to probably kick six cornerbacks. Let the best 6 people win. And I think that, I'm looking around the league with a surplus of cornerbacks. Who's to say Miami's not sniffing a trade to a team like Baltimore right now who needs corners, who just lost Marlon Humphrey for the first quarter of the season? You know what I mean? Maybe there's a team that's interested in making a trade. They know they have a partner to get rid of one of their corners. You go in there and bring a guy in who can play. I think it's a good move, man. I think he's a good football player. He's battle tested, and I love that. He's another good, smart veteran to pair with these young guys.
Yeah, I just think, like you said, more competition for that room. And if Needham isn't close to returning, I think Kohu and Callahan as their top slot options is really good, bro.
Right. And when they signed Nick Needham's contract, it was so low to me, Reason, that it felt like, what is this guy going to be out for the first half of the season? Like, what was it, 2.4 million or 2.7 million? Like, Nick Needham, I thought on the open market would probably get close to 6. You know what I mean? It was one of those things that contract told me that there's a recovery. And again, let's see. Maybe, if Nick Needham beats out a guy like Bryce Callahan, more power to him. But let's create that competition.
Yeah, dude, this is a guy who he's super familiar, right? I mean, it just this move always made sense, bro.
And you know what this tells me? Vic Fangio's watching Nico Collins tear up some of these corners, and he's probably like, "Hey, I know a guy that can do the job. Let's get this guy in here for a workout."
Well, at least we know they're not sitting on their hands, right?
True.
You know what I mean? So, but I know everyone's going to be frustrated because everyone wants, this isn't what they wanted, bro.
Well, if there's one position in the NFL that you want a surplus of, right? And we all know that quarterback's the most important position in football. Well, it's cornerback because the rules favor the passing game, right? The NFL has pushed away from the build up a line like you're the 1990s Dallas Cowboys, get a guy like Emmitt Smith, control the clock, run the football, win Super Bowl. Now it's pass happy, it's fantasy football, it's all about touchdowns. If you want to beat Patrick Mahomes, you better have great corners, right? If you want to beat Joe Burrow in the playoffs, you better have great corners. Like in the AFC, to win this, you better have a secondary that can go there and slow down, generational type players like Patrick Mahomes. So if the Dolphins are going to invest in corners, pass rushers all day long, and I'll never complain.
Yeah. Dude, I don't know. I'm not going to hate on it, bro. I'm really not.
I hope it happens. I hope it happens.
Well, I think it's going to. I'm surprised that he left without a deal. Hosted him on a visit, and I'm surprised that he left without a deal. All right. So let me ask you this before we get into this. What would you say to fans who are, would you tell them to be patient, or would you tell them to, hey, we're probably moving forward with what we got? Because like you said, a lot of people are I saw it too. A lot of people are saying, of course, Greer adds another cornerback than an offensive lineman. What would you tell those people? Be patient, help is coming, or we got to make best with what we have? Because I'm kind of in the latter, bro, unless they make a big trade, which I don't know if I see them pulling the trigger on. I think I don't see us adding a needle mover on the offensive line, Neil.
I also just think it's all about supply and demand. Like, how many needle movers are available in the offensive line right now? You know what I mean? Like, when you look at the free agent, there's not a lot of good free agents that get you excited because of, there's an inventory shortage of good offensive linemen in the NFL right now. Because of that, teams aren't going to trade good players. Contenders aren't. You might be able to get an option, into the season, if teams, are falling their face, aren't playing at the level they want to, you know what I mean? Maybe then people become available. Right now, there's only so much more you can do. So I honestly think that it is what it is for right now. Actually, barring if we get really bad news on Terron Armstead, then I think they have to go make a move. But right now, I think it's status quo on the offensive line. I truly believe what you said earlier. They like their line way more than we as fans do. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'll give the Dolphins front office the benefit of the doubt on everything except the offensive line, because I've seen too much of the same. And I hope I'm wrong, man, because that could be detrimental to this team. Because we haven't even talked since obviously Dalvin Cook became a Jet. This running game needs to be better this year than it was last year. And I believe Devin Achane can do that. But no running back is good enough to do it on their own. This offensive line needs to get in there, and they got to get tougher. They got to fight. Like, they have to create lanes. A lot of what this offense wants to do, and I'm talking about late in the season, not early, late in the season when it's playoff time and you need to win games, you have to have enough faith in that offensive line when it's 3rd and 2 for them to say, whether it's Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Devin Achane, go right behind Robert Hunt and Connor Williams, and let's go get those 2 yards. We need that. I don't think it's going to get much improved this year, but reason I am banging the drum that next year, in the draft, defensive tackle and offensive line, and potentially a linebacker. But I don't care about any more of the sexy skill positions. We need some meat and potatoes.
I agree. Brad says we are one Xavier Howard injury away from disaster.
I disagree with that, actually. Because you know why I disagree with that? Because I love Xavier Howard, and I think he's going to have a bounce back year. But I really like Kader Kohou and Cam Smith as well. So I wouldn't say it's an utter disaster, because I think we have a serious potential future Pro Bowler in Cam Smith. I think that guy's a gamer.
Shout out to Lucifer You. They become a YouTube member. Appreciate you.
Oh, nice.
And guys, for all you Patreon members and such, I forgot to say it earlier. I just dropped earlier, about 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, I dropped a brand new Patreon episode. If you're not a Patreon, patreon.com/Inside the NFL. A new 3 Takes Thursday, where I went a little deeper into what I knew behind the scenes about Dalvin Cook, where some of our frustrations lied, and all of us who knew what was going on behind the scenes and why we were frustrated at times with how this was all rolling. So it's a pretty juicy episode. Talks about McDaniel's influence, talks about Greer's stubbornness, and I've got some camp chatter notes as well, that things I've heard privately that I talked about in there. So go check it out, patreon.com/Finside the NFL. Appreciate all of you. Now, let's get into the training camp recap. Let's start off with the highlights. We got about only 4 minutes because we don't have fan access like we used to. Just is what it is. So here is got about 4 minutes of highlights from today. Nothing really from the offense. One of the rare days where the offense didn't really produce anything for us to watch here. So let's get into it. Cam Good rolling out there. Boys getting all warmed up.
How impressed are you, Reason, with Jaelan Phillips? I don't recall.
Unbelievable.
I don't recall a defensive player in a very long time. You got to go back to probably Cameron Wake, that had just the ability to dominate on a day in, day out basis like we've seen from Jaelan Phillips.
I think he's a dark horse for Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's a legit 15 sack. Take the over on 12.5. I've said that all off season. He's a legit 15 sack candidate. I think, like, this guy, every practice, it's at least, I think he's had 4 joint practices now, and he's got like 8 sacks.
I got in a debate earlier today. I said that I would take Jaelan Phillips over Aiden Hutchinson.
Oh yeah, for sure. Right now, yeah.
Yep.
For sure. He might be the top. When you're talking about like young edge rushers, he's like right there at the top, right?
Yeah, and you know who had a good day today from what I saw too was Raekwon Davis. So it's good to see
He
him getting
did,
some
yep.
pressure. It seemed like a very like the Houston Texans actually have a pretty good offensive line.
They do. Well, they
Uh
do, and even Titus Howard's out right now. But what's sad, bro, about the Pilly injury is how good has he been, eh?
yeah, did they say that's a long-term thing? I know it was a neck.
They haven't said anything yet. But what's been so impressive about him, Neil, is how much he stepped up since they signed Deshaun Hand. He's been the one out of that group that really stepped up, right? Like Jalen Twyman's made plays here and there, but really Pilly's found a whole nother level since they brought in Deshaun Hand.
Yeah, and I really like what I saw out of him in the preseason game. I went back and
Yeah.
watched it. I really like him. That's why I actually did I was waiting for a meeting today. I had a lunch and I had 30 minutes in my car and I kind of jotted a quick top 53.
Hold on, let me hit this. Go ahead. What's up?
I had him on my top 50. I did a quick top 53 and I had him on.
I think we'll do our roster projection next week because I'll be gone the following week, right? I'll be in the Bahamas.
Ooh, yeah.
So, yeah, Howard getting the interception allowed there. Look at this coverage right here. Check this out.
Is that Cater?
Breakup. Ooh.
I don't know if you've heard this. I've heard that Elijah Campbell has outplayed Elliott, and obviously Brandon Jones has been limited.
Yeah. I've heard Elliott's not been that impressive. Here you go, bro. Watch this. Noah gets smoked by Nico.
By 6 yards.
Holy jeez.
And
I get
Nico's not that
one-on-ones are
fast.
built. I know. I get one-on-ones are built, but he just got his clock clean. Like the separation was ridiculous.
Yeah.
McDaniel watching the one-on-ones right there for you. Shout out to Bobby Shouse and all the people out there. Cam Smith there in the red non-contact jersey. He was out there today. The next play, I think you're going to see, this is a pass breakup from Cam Smith. He had a pass breakup today.
His ability to
That's my
break
boy
on
right there, huh?
His ability to break on the football, it's special.
There it is right there. Boom.
Yeah, he's going to be a find. He's going to be
he's a stud.
He's going to be the reason that Xavier Howard's career in Miami won't be probably much longer than next year at the most.
This might be that's the AVG pick. Do you see him just come up there and pick that?
Yeah,
that's the AVG pick from today.
Yeah, I like AVG, man. I love that he's a versatile guy.
Yo, Neil, this last week he's really taken a step in the interior. If you've been like, he's really seemed like he's starting over the past week. The lights seem to have gone on for him in the interior there. Bro, can I be honest with you, dog? Find a way. Honestly, if that means Duke goes, find a way to keep Aubrey and Channing Tindall with Andrew Van Ginkel, David Long, and Jerome Baker. What are we playing around with?
I'm 100% with you. Honestly, I think that when you look at the Dolphins defense, it's going to be a lot of interchangeable movement. You're going to have a lot of different formations, people coming on and off the field with the guy who's probably going to see the most snaps back there is Javon Holland. But I think you're going to see a lot of rotation, a lot of matchup. But I'm with you, man.
I had something in my Patreon video today from the portion of Camp Chatter update. I've heard they've been tinkering with Holland in the slot a little bit, and this goes back to what I was telling people when Jalen Ramsey was talking about him playing the star role. He told everyone, if they were listening, there's other guys on this team that can play that role. And I've said since Javon Holland was in Oregon, since I've been evaluating him, first video I ever did on him was October 2021. He was in my top 25 players Dolphin fans should watch in college. And he was like number 9 or number 8 on the list. And I said he reminded me of Jamal Adams, the way Oregon used him. They would use him in the box, single high. They'd use him in the slot. They'd even line him up on the boundary. So when you talk about guys who can play that star role, I think Javon can play that star role. I think Cam Smith, once he gets acclimated to the league, can play that star role. I think Javon Holland, Cam Smith can play. I think Cater, once he gets acclimated to the boundary, he could play that star role. And I think Jalen can too. I think we've got like 4 guys that can legitimately play that role, man. And I think Cam Smith's one of those. I think Javon Holland's one of those, bro.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I 100%. I think there's so much versatility. Honestly, I can't wait for him to come back. But you almost get excited to see these young guys play in the absence of Jalen Ramsey, right? To see how they respond. I'll say that about the preseason game for me. I want us this week against a bad Houston team to come out and score more touches. I don't care who's quarterback, and I want to see points.
Stroud's going to get destroyed in game when the snaps and watch.
Well,
we're going to light him up, I think.
The young guys on this team, like Shannon Tyndall was my one of my standout players, and I love that. Eric Uzakama, right? Like when you see guys that you drafted in those rounds and they're developing, that speaks highly on this coaching staff. Devin A-Chain looked great in limited touches. He didn't. I think what people don't understand is
he didn't get the holes Gaskin got, though. I'm gonna tell you that much.
Right.
Notice the run game jump when Eichenberg got out and Wynn came in. All of a sudden, these holes for Gaskin are just massive for him to run through.
Yeah, I see a ball game fighting the good fight in the in the chat for us, but I did see a lot of people, and I've commented on this yesterday, overreacting because Laramie Tunsil beat Bradley Chubb in a rep, right? Yeah,
whatever.
Laramie Tunsil's probably the best left tackle in football.
You'd expect him and Chubb to trade reps, man. There's no way you're going to dominate Laramie Tunsil.
Do you know that I would say, who do you think is the best pass rusher in football right now? Nick Bosa, probably. He wins 5% of his pass rushing snaps. 5%.
Yeah, it's tough. People don't realize this, man.
The NFL sack record's 22.5, which means the best people that ever did it got less than 2 per game. That's I just perspective. You know what I mean? Like Bradley Chubb's had a very good training camp.
He was starting to come on near the end of the season. He opened up a lot for Jaelan Phillips, but because people, again, this goes back to Richmond not getting in the Hall of Fame. There's pressures aren't seen as sexy stats like sacks or taking on double teams like pancaking a defender aren't seen as sexy stats when they're a necessity for other guys to flourish and for plays to work out in your favor, right?
Right.
He's not going to get credit for taking on double teams so Jalen can get pressures. And Jalen wasn't getting credit from a lot of our fan base for getting pressures, even though they were being very disruptive to a lot of pass plays. He wasn't getting credit for those just because he didn't bring him to the ground. When people don't realize pressures can be even more impactful than a sack because a pressure can lead to an interception, and that's a turnover, and that's the ball coming back the other way.
Well, there's so many fans, and I'm not knocking them. This is how they digest football. They judge football.
In every fan base, by the way, people were not signaling.
Yeah, no, I'm not. This isn't knocking. They judge football by results. They look at box scores.
The stat line, yeah.
Like they'll say, did they win? Super Bowl. Like everything is by the result, not the journey. And I'm telling you, man, if that's how you digest football, it's okay. I won't agree with you in a lot of situations because the results don't always tell stories.
We're all Marino fans. We should be that's the epitome of all that. Yep. Context matters and all that.
And I said that last night, and I got the old tired Dan Marino argument. And I'm like, well, I love Dan Marino. It doesn't impact me. I think he's a top 5 all-time quarterback without the ring. So his career still meant something. You know what I mean? It's not like it didn't mean anything because he didn't win a ring.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. All right, let's get into the recap we got a couple recaps to go over here from today. So let's get in to the first one. This one coming from the Sun Sentinel. And this is what they said, Neal. They said the Miami Dolphins 4-time Pro Bowl left tackle Terron Armstead left the team's joint practice with an apparent leg injury. We've gone over that. We know he was walking, and we'll see. We are waiting on the MRI to get a full take on it. Robert Hunt said hopefully he's okay. We all know how important he is to this team, and Neal went over that in great detail. The other thing too today was Brandon Pilley. He was attended to for several minutes as he lied on the ground. And it was apparently all due to a neck injury. So we're waiting to hear back on him. Stock up for today was Javon Holland. He made the defensive play of practice with a deep interception of CJ Stroud, where he showed his range covering to the sideline. He was in the vicinity of a forced fumble on the final play of a Texans 2-minute drill to wrap up practice. Although linebacker Duke Riley may have forced it, it's uncertain who will be started next to Holland as the other safety. but he could start in his role in defensive coordinator Vic Fangio's scheme. Stock down was Noah Benogany. Has had some moments and flashes in training camp with at least a couple of interceptions, but he was significantly beat deep on a go route. We played that clip against Nico Hollins. And then after one play in 11-11, he was pulled. Although that may have been to switch out the nickel into a base package, and other cornerbacks, including Apple and rookie Cam Smith in a red non-contact jersey, were given a chance in his spot. Obviously, aside from Armstead and Pilley, Jalen Waddle was held out for the second consecutive day. Cam Smith, he saw the action in team drills, even with the red jersey. Left guard Liam Eichenberg saw one-on-one reps, but none in a team setting after only working out on the side Wednesday. Myles Gaskin was again working off to the side. Brandon Jones did not participate again, as McDaniel said he hasn't had a setback with the knee rehab, which people were chattering about, right? Others not seen in drills were Alec Ingold, Keon Crossan, Justin Bethel, Braylon Sanders, and of course, Jalen Ramsey. Nick Needham and Tanner Connor remain on the PUP list. All right. Man, that's turning into quite the extensive list, Neil. Let's talk about this for a sec. Liam Eichenberg. This is a guy who he can't afford to be missing reps right now, Neil, because with every rep he misses, that's another opportunity for a Lester Cotton, an Isaiah Wynn, or a Robert Jones to take that job away, brother. I mean, and then what are your thoughts on Mike McDaniel confirming Brandon Jones hasn't had a setback, as he was kind of looked like they were ramping him up to come back, and now he's been shut down, and they're scampering and scrambling to find a partner for Javon Holland back there, Neil?
Yeah, no, on the Eichenberg situation, man, I think he'll be on the 53, but I don't think he deserves it. I think Lester Cotton and Robert Jones are both better football players than him. And, whenever I watch them and they all are playing at different times of the game and all that stuff, Eichenberg being hurt kind of after really not securing that left guard job, to me, is a big story, because I hope that this really gives Isaiah Wynn that chance. I think he's the best left guard on this roster, and I think he deserves to start. The Dolphins have been very, very committed to Liam Eichenberg at getting that opportunity. But let's be honest, it's failed. It's over a year. They've tried this experiment. It's not working. So sometimes injuries hurt you. Sometimes they help you because they create an opportunity for someone else, So that, and on the Brandon Jones stuff, it's interesting, man. I don't know if maybe they're just giving him a couple extra weeks and they're going to really turn him up in a week or two. But they can say what they want, but they're definitely holding him back for something, right? Like,
yeah.
So I don't know if the injury, he had a snag in his recovery or whatever it might be, but I just got to say, NFL coaches are really good liars. Like, they're really good at it, and they have to be. They have to protect their team and the information, and they don't get information with doctors is a very fluid thing. We see it now more than ever. Terron Armstead got hurt hours ago. We have no idea what the diagnosis, the MRI is going to be tomorrow. It takes time to get these injuries and get the coaches aren't going to get up there and tell you everything you want to hear. So maybe there is something. And, to my point earlier, when I talked about defensive tackle and offensive line, we have a lot of expiring contracts at safety next year as well. And man, that'd be a fun position to find a stud to pair with Javon Holland. That's for sure.
Yeah, it
so,
would be.
I think about it. I'll get worried if they're not out there, if those kind of guys aren't out there next week.
I agree.
You know what I mean? I'm not worried yet. It's early. And for me, the good coaches, they wean their players into the preseason. They see enough of them to feel good, but then they pull them out and they say, you know what? Let's really let the back half of this roster get shaped. We know who our starting guys are.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm starting to get the vibe that the majority of the one reps are going to come against the Jags, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the vibe I'm getting. So, all right. Here are the observations from Daniel Oifusi of the Miami Herald from today. Wide receiver Tyreek Hill told reporters after practice that he wasn't supposed to participate, Neil. He wasn't seen in one-on-one drills against Texans defensive backs, but afterward he was a participant in 11-11 drills, and he made a compelling case that he doesn't need many, if any, reps in the preseason. He was again a standout on offense, catching multiple passes downfield, including a 12-yard pass from Mike White during 7-on-7 red zone drills. I wasn't even supposed to practice today, but I just had to find a way to get the guys going. One-on-ones were kind of slow for us. We began to pick it up, but no, I just love competition so much. I feel like I just can't get away from it. The trainer, he told me, we're going to ramp you down a little bit. You can just chill today. You can relax. And I only get one chance to play this game that I love because I know it's going to go by fast. I can remember yesterday when I first got drafted and came into the league, and here I am in year 8 doing what I love. So there's not many jobs where you can get to work outside and have fun and run fast and run by people and score and get a crowd reaction. So I'm just enjoying every moment. And then I got my kids out here with me, so that's even better for me. So I'm enjoying it. Hill wasn't in for the final drill for the Dolphins offense. And by the way, I don't know if you saw it today, Neal, but he also said that he doesn't watch game film, eh?
Yeah.
He just plays off the leverage and what he sees from the safeties and the defenders on the field.
I think that's a little bit of gamemanship, to be honest.
I agree too. Hill wasn't in. I was laughing though. Hill wasn't in for the final drill for the Dolphins offense, a 2-minute situation in which the drive started at Miami's 25-yard line, and the offense was down by 7 points. It was a disjointed possession that included multiple short passes from quarterback Tua Tagovailoa to running back Raheem Mostert, and eventually ended around the Texans' 45-yard line with time expiring. The drive not only excluded Hill, but was without Armstead and wide out Jalen Waddle. Hill doesn't appear to be dealing with any injury, but it was a reminder that the Dolphins' hopes for another great season on offense don't just hinge on the availability of Tagovailoa, and Neal covered that with Tyreek Hill and Armstead's importance earlier. After throwing a pair of interceptions on Wednesday, Tagovailoa took care of the ball on Thursday and connected with wide receiver Braxton Berrios on a deep completion of about 50 yards. I heard it was a thing of beauty. While a Texans linebacker told Tagovailoa he was not swayed by Tagovailoa's eye trickery on Wednesday, McDaniel said that's all part of the learning process within the offense. He's probably made 10 plays yesterday that were absolutely fantastic, doing the same thing, McDaniel said. He added, I think it's important to emphasize that you have to take each turnover individually. Tagovailoa didn't have much success in 7-on-7 red zone work, but his backups got into the end zone. Thompson found rookie tight end Elijah Higgins for a 12-yard score on a seam route, and then White connected with Julian Hill in the back of the end zone. On the score, Hill bumped into McDaniel, who was watching behind the goalpost, and knocked off his sunglasses. Seemed like McDaniel, who always has a one-liner near, had a witty comment for him, and the first-year player helped pick up his glasses. While Thompson had a nice touchdown throw in short red zone work, he was also intercepted by Desmond King. White also had an interception dropped by the Texans, so Tua looks like was the only one who did not have a turnover-worthy play today. Jaelan Phillips recalled after practice how George Fant, then playing for the New York Jets, had his way against Phillips in his rookie season. I had no answers for him at all, Phillips said. The rules were reversed this week, a testament to Phillips' growth as a pass rusher. He dominated the matchup in both practices and again recorded multiple would-be sacks and team drills. He also recovered a fumbled handoff during the Texans' 2-minute drill, but the possession continued on, and it was another good outing for the Dolphins' defense and team drills. Eli Apple was beaten by Nico Collins for a long score, but otherwise, the unit continued to get pressure on C.J. Stroud. Safety Javon Holland intercepted Stroud on a deep attempt. All right, we're going to cover the defense here in a moment. But let's talk about the Tua Tagovailoa bounce back day, because for the last, 5-6 practices between the inter-squad scrimmage, the joint practices, it kind of looks like the offense was sputtering a bit there, or very up and down would be the best term, I guess. And Tua had a good day, took care of the football. And, last week we were raving about Chosen. He was coming alive. He was making noise. And now it's swaying. We've seen it every week, bro. It's swaying back and forth. And now we got Braxton and Tua lighting up the Houston Texans defense for a 50-yard completion. And you know what I love about this, Neal? All the interceptions and all of this stuff is all the touchdowns, the interceptions, everything's situational. Nothing's in the game flow. And if a 50-yard pass to Braxton Berrios happens in the game flow of the game, momentum's on our side, and our offense is freaking probably driving hard and got them on their heels. What are you thinking about that wide receiver battle? Neal continues to be back and forth. It continues to be. It's probably one of the best slugfests, other than the left guard competition, we've had in camp so far. No.
Yeah, no, I think what they try to do, man, is they try to find their strengths. And once they find them and they know it, they kind of move on and kind of build off of, that and see what else they have. we all for those who have played football. When I was 16 years old, I was a sophomore. I had 3 interceptions in a practice, and when I was leaving the field on practice, I had a big smile on my face, and my defensive coordinator looked at me. He's like, "The hell are you smiling about?" I'm like, "Hey, man, 3 picks." He's like, "That was practice. That doesn't mean shit." You know what I mean? It was like, I'm like, "Damn, he's right." Like that doesn't even get in the newspaper, So it's like, I think what people don't realize is that when you look at these practices, the whole purpose of this practice is to get reps, but to find what works, what doesn't work. And you don't go out there trying to win. You don't come out there. Mike McDaniel's not sitting there with his play sheet calling the game to win. It is more to get the reps, to get the chemistry down. Like there's no winning and losing in practice. We beat the Eagles and kicked their ass in a joint practice last year. They were in the Super Bowl. We weren't. Like I like, to me, it doesn't matter. And with Tua Tagovailoa throwing a couple interceptions, man, we've seen Tua Tagovailoa play football for 3 years. What he doesn't do is throw high volumes of interceptions. I don't care about any of it until it's to the game field. My question is this: do we even need to see Tua in the preseason? Do we need to see Tyreek in a preseason game?
No,
I don't.
I don't think so.
I don't need to. Like, I know what we have.
Give them a drive in the final game just to get their feet wet, but I wouldn't.
Right. Yeah, I don't like if it's extended, like nothing more than a drive is what I need to see. Tyreek, Waddle, we know what we have there. Maybe when Waddle gets back from the injury, you give him a series, give the starters one good series to go down and go put up some points. But like, I don't need to see much out of him. Like, I'm not here grading Tua, wondering if he's the guy anymore. That's done. That was 2 years ago. I'm moving forward. Like, this is the franchise quarterback. What are the pieces around him like? Bigger question to answer your question, Braxton Berrios and Robbie Chosen is a great number 3 and number 4 duo. No matter who's at 3 and 4.
And Izakama's knocking on the door to break out.
Well, that's I think you had mentioned this a couple weeks ago, and I'm in agreement that I think when the season ends, when you head into next year, there's no question the number 3 receiver on this team's Eric Izakama. That's where I think they're heading. And I called him in a Dolphins Twitter space. I think they're going to use him like they use Deebo Samuel. I think that's the type of stuff they're going to give him, with like those end arounds, some of those short screens, let him create. Because he is, I'll say this, when I looked at him in the preseason game, I knew he had a physicalness to him. It was way more than I thought. I was impressed.
What I've already told people what the plan is. It's like Cooper Kupp, how they used Cooper Kupp, in terms of you can use him in 11 personnel, put him in the slot, but off motion you can give 12 and 21 personnel looks with how you can shift people out there, as long as they want to teach him tight end responsibility so he can be physical without having a second tight end out there. That's how they're going to beat. That's what McVay discovered, how he could beat Fangio's defense when it kept him up all night after it shut him down. And when Belichick used Fangio's blueprint to shut him down in the Super Bowl, that was basically his answer. You need 2 tight ends out there, but you can't have 2 tight ends out there. So how do you do that? You cross-train a really talented receiver in tight end duties, so you can have a tight end threat off motion, and you can give different personnel look. You can give different personnel package looks out of 11 personnel off motion. Confuse the shit out of the defense, right? And they don't. And then when it comes at them, it's physical. Like, it punches them in the mouth.
He's gonna be a red zone vulture this year, man. He is going to be impactful in the red zone too. Yep, yeah. He's going to be great in the red zone.
Yeah. And I think people were really shocked about, clearly people hadn't watched the tape, because I don't know why anyone was shocked about what he could do after the catch. That's what he was known for. He wasn't a 4-4 guy at Texas Tech, but he was known for what he could do after the catch, like Debo. Like,
he's really good with
the ball in his hands.
Yeah, he's really good with the ball.
He's a playmaker with the ball in his hands, right?
And you know what? Texas Tech always
shredded.
Has those
he looks like he's transformed. He's starting to.
Very impressive.
Tip of the cap to you, Mr. Welker. Looks like you've done a fantastic job. And I want to remind the guy sitting next to me right now, when he's panicking over Eric Izakama last year, and I was telling him, bro, trust the process with Wes Welker. He went to Texas Tech. He ain't going to put this kid in a position to not be successful. And I think Wes Welker's done a fucking fantastic job, bro. Kudos to him. Bro, I think we got one of the best wide receiver coaches in the NFL right now, bro.
And you know what? He's a good guy to cheer for, man. I like Wes Welker to me is, you talk about guys that deserve. Well, Welker's not in the Hall of Fame, right?
No.
Yeah, he's the best slot receiver probably that ever played the game, right? I mean,
Yeah, he'll be there probably, I think. Who did you put in, him or Julian Edelman?
oh my God, Welker by far.
Yeah. He was
Welker
on
by
that.
far.
He was on Manning's team that won too, right?
Yeah, but when Welker, when Brady had Welker, Randy Moss, Dante Stallworth, that pass attack when they lost in the Super Bowl, but they were undefeated. There was a 3 to 4 year period when Wes Welker was a top 5 productive receiver in football, and like he was catching outrageous
he's
amount. Like
ridiculous.
you remember he called the 99 yarder against us on primetime.
Of course, bro.
So yeah,
But he was good even with Manning. He won championships with Brady and Manning. That's a very impressive.
He was good. He was good here. that's why New England gave a second round pick for him.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So from SI, they said today was a hot and humid day. And hey, I wanted to show this because they shout out former Dolphins Pro Bowl tackle Richmond Webb was out there for the second consecutive day today.
They got to get him out in some drills. Let's see if the old guy's got it.
Yeah, I know. I know. So they can tell us that Robert Hunt and Isaiah Wynn appeared to do well in pass protection drills. There was a minor skirmish in that drill involving Isaiah Wynn and Texans D lineman Kurt Hinish after Hinish unsuccessfully tried to get by him by swinging his arms at Wynn. I love it. Shut him down, baby, Isaiah. Plays that stood out in the they said the Houston DBs clearly had the best of the Dolphins wide receivers in the passing drills one-on-one. But the play that stood out in that session for the Dolphins was a nice back shoulder pass from Tua Tagovailoa to who? Neil? Who was it? Eric Eichenberg and Chris Coleman making great move on the defender, but then dropping the pass. Following the one-on-ones, the Dolphins offense did 7-on-7 work in the red zone. And the highlight was a touchdown pass over the middle from Mike White to Julian Hill. Skylar Thompson also had a touchdown pass, a nice over-the-middle throw to rookie Elijah Higgins. Thompson's last throw was picked off after Eric Eichenberg fell. White also connected in that session for a touchdown with Tyreek Hill. Said after the practice he wasn't supposed to practice. Tua work in red zone 7-on-7 included 2 incompletions and 2 completions underneath to Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert. Berrios shows up again today as the 11-11 drills featured a lot of Tyreek Hill and Braxton Berrios. Hill had 2 receptions after Armstead went down, a short crosser from Tua, followed by a deep out from Thompson. On the first play of the second offensive series and teamwork, Tua hit Berrios deep down the middle. It was a beautiful throw and followed it not long after with another deep outside shot to Hill. So Tua was dealing today in 11-11s when it mattered. An 11-11 red zone session was tough on the media to see, but we did notice White hitting Eichenberg in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. Pass protection was decent for the most part of practice, but there were back-to-back sacks against Thompson and Tua, sandwiched around a Tua throwaway in the face of pressure. Mike White's last pass of practice was a nice completion over the middle to Chris Coleman. As they did Wednesday, the Dolphins' offensive players went to the field closest for the fans for the final 2-minute drive. Featured a whole bunch of dump-offs with Mostert targeted on 5 of Tua's 6 passes. Mostert had 2 drops on that drive, though one came when he was hit immediately after getting his hands on the ball. Tua also had a nice completion to River Craycraft on that drive, which mysteriously ended with 3 seconds left on the clock after a Mostert completion. While the Dolphins defense was on the field for Houston's own last 2-minute drive, Berrios walked off practice accompanied by a trainer. So I'm going to assume that's something to do with those stitches and what he's got going on. But Neil, a couple things here. Not a lot of 8-chain talk from today. Not a lot at all, really, on a day where it seemed a lot of dump-offs and opportunities for the running backs in 7-7s, 11-11s out of the backfield. Tua cooking in 11-11. Eichenberg with a couple of touchdowns. But, overall, too, Robert Hunt and Isaiah Wynn showing off in pass protection drills, and Isaiah Wynn showing a little intensity, Neil, some intensity that offensive line freaking needs. Let's not lie to ourselves right now. Isaiah Wynn showing intensity, some good play from Tua and the offense today. And obviously we already talked about Eichenberg But really, any takeaways from you today from the offense?
I think it's a good thing that it's a different person getting the job done every day. I think that's a great thing. Except Tyreek pretty much gets it done every time he's on the football field. One thing I will say is that Innes and Dr. Reggie from the Twitter Spaces, they were at the game, and I know that A-Chain in 7-on-7s did cook a linebacker for a 30-yard touchdown, and I think it was down the seam, which so that was something that they shared. They were out there at practice today. But absolutely, man, I think there's so many ways this team can get you, right? Like 1 week it's Devin A-Chain, 1 week it's Waddle, 1 week it's Tyreek, 1 week it's Izakama, and then it's Robbie Chosen. There's so many weapons that I just think it showcases just how dangerous this offense can be. And to me, you got to ask yourself, is Isaiah Wynn a top 5 offensive lineman on this team? If the answer is yes, you need to find a way to get him in there. And to me, he might be 3, no worse than 4. And to me, that means he needs to be starting. And him being one of the better guards here doesn't surprise me. I think it would be malpractice if he's not your starting left guard week 1.
How is no one mentioning that A-Chain run in any of those articles?
It was a pass, and it was down the seam, and it was 30 yards. And I'll get clarification, but I was listening when I was driving.
No, I believe you, but why is no one see? That's the thing. That's a big play to a rookie. That should be in all of these reports we've gone over, and it's not. And we haven't even seen. We haven't even heard a peep about A-Chain.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I'll say this, man. I think that some of the fans have been going to these games doing better coverage than some of the professionals people that get paid, I'll say, to do it. Man, I'll just say, other teams, I followed Aaron Wilson he covers the Texans, right? And I feel like and it's not everyone, so I don't want to make it seem like it, but they don't cover a lot of negative crap. And maybe that's, maybe they're being homers and they're being blinded, but maybe I think our team's coverage has a tendency to focus too much on everything that's not good, and they miss the things that are good. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'm like, you come away with a practice report and I hear this, but when I was following it live, Tyreek Hill caught 4 passes over 30 yards in 2 minutes, but no one talks about it. You know what I mean? I feel like sometimes it's like it's the old, for wrestling fans, Eric Bischoff used to say controversy equals cash. Maybe, that's what gets clicks, is when things aren't great. I don't know, but sometimes I just sit there and I question some of the coverage that comes across about the Dolphins.
Over 450 of you in the room. Please smash that like button, subscribe if you're new. Finally, here from SI, the defensive observations. Each day of the Miami Dolphins joint practice has been concluded with a scrimmage-like situational period where the offense and defense is put in identical situations and their counterpart is required to respond. During Thursday's situational period, the Houston Texans first-team offense was placed on the 25-yard line, given 2 minutes to produce a touchdown to complete a come-from-behind victory. The performance Vic Fangio's unit put together hints that his side of the ball appears ready for the start of the regular season because they produced not 1 but 2 turnovers to win the drill, if not the day. On the first snap of the situational period, a Texans receiver in motion messed up the shotgun snap when the ball hit him as he crossed quarterback C.J. Stroud's face, and outside linebacker Jaelan Phillips corralled the fumble to produce the first drive-stopping turnover. The Texans were then gracefully given a do-over, and Phillips was again in Stroud's face, rushing a short pass. The Texans then completed 2 more passes to move Houston's offense to the 47-yard line with 39 seconds left on the clock. Miami responded with a sack from newly acquired defensive lineman Deshaun Hand. The play that followed by Emmanuel Ogbah drawing a holding penalty on right tackle George Fant, who's filling in as a Texan starter while Titus Howard is sidelined by an injury. On a critical second and forever play, inside linebacker Duke Riley stripped the ball from Dalton Schultz at the end of a reception, producing either an interception or a forced fumble and a fumble recovery to end the practice. So big play from Duke Riley we were talking about earlier. Maybe I need to slow my roll. However, the entire day wasn't peaches and cream for Miami's defense. Look at the 112 reference. In fact, the unit struggled for most of the one-on-ones and red zone periods, and the Texans receivers exposed how much Miami's depth at cornerback has been watered down by injuries since camp began, hence the Bryce Callahan visit. Noah Benogany struggled for most of the day, which started with him getting beaten deep for a touchdown by Nico Collins during one-on-ones. But Collins didn't discriminate because he also beat Eli Apple for a 65-yard touchdown, and then which was produced off a 15-yard slant. The Dolphins didn't have safety help over the top, and Collins outran a trailing Apple all the way for the score. What happened on the coverage wasn't clear, but it highlights the safety issues Miami have had all camp, struggling to find a quality starter to play next to Javon Holland. Deshaun Elliott hasn't impressed and struggles from a range standpoint. Brandon Jones, who's working his way back from a knee injury, he had surgery repaired last October, is nursing an unrelated injury and has been shelved for the week. Trey Williams, who was also working his way back from a knee injury that kept him silent all 2022, hasn't gotten substantive reps during 11-11 work, leaving Elijah Campbell and Verone McKinley as the only challengers to Elliott. Campbell finished flash playmaking ability and range at times the past 2 days, but also has struggled. Cam Smith, the Dolphins' 2023 second-round pick, got involved in the team period of practice for the first time since suffering a shoulder injury in the 19-3 loss to the Falcons last week. After Apple was beaten for a touchdown, the Dolphins replaced him with Smith, who was given a red jersey, which indicates he can't be touched because of an injury. Problem is the Texans ran the ball in his directions on one of his 2 11-11 snaps. Smith locked up with the receiver and was driven back a few yards before being taken off the field. After the play, I'm assuming the Dolphins coaches second-guessed their decision to get him involved in the scrimmage-like action. Some other notable moments from defensive practice. Raekwon Davis had an impactful day, producing a sack and a handful of pressures during team periods. Holland pulled down an interception on a deep pass from Stroud. Phillips produced another multiple sack performance. He dominated Fan for the past 2 days, serving as Miami's most impactful player for the 2 joint practices. AVG, who shined as an inside linebacker on Wednesday, allowed a touchdown to tailback Mike Boone in red zone 11-11 work, but yet he doesn't talk about the interception he had, right? Starting inside linebacker David Long produced a tackle for a loss on a Devin Singletary run in red zone work, but Long's performance was inconsistent for most of Thursday's session. Brandon Pilley suffered what appears to be a head injury during one-on-ones late in 11-11 periods. The media struggled to see, but the concern for Pilley's health grew when players from both teams took a knee and started praying. Pilley walked off the field on his own and was scheduled to undergo an MRI. If he can't play in Saturday's preseason game against the Texans, the Dolphins might be forced to play Davis, Seiler, and Emmanuel Ogbah longer than intended because Wilkins is embarking on a hold-in, and Hand, Jalen Twyman, Josiah Bronson, and Randy Charlton are the only other defensive linemen left to finish out the game when the starters and prominent players are benched. So, defensive takeaways here. First of all, we mentioned it early. Jaelan Phillips, my friend, take the over. He just seems unstoppable. And Neal, are we on the verge of watching a top defense come together this year, a top 5, top 10 defense come together? Because they have really rebounded even after Jalen Ramsey's injury. They've been pretty much lights out, even with the few questions remaining amongst them, Neal.
Yeah, I think this defense is going to actually be the strength of this football team. And, they're looking at adding guys like Bryce Callahan that only makes that better. You're going to get Ramsey back at some point. But, the story of training camp has been Jaelan Phillips. And, I don't want to hold any punches. Like, we all kind of thought this was coming. We've been talking about it for a year now. But I actually think it's coming at a larger dosage than I even thought. This guy has the look to be a TJ Watt level terror off the edge. And I don't say that lightly. A complete game changer, franchise cornerstone player. I mean, what you're seeing is when natural athleticism and talent gets coached and the refinement actually starts to work. But this is where I think people have to watch these plays, watch the practice, watch the games. Because the reason he's also getting open is because you can't double team him when you got a Bradley Chubb on the other side. And you have players like Zach Sealer, Raekwon Davis, and hopefully soon Christian Wilkins back out there. Like, that defensive front is elite. The secondary is elite. And the longest tenured Miami Dolphins have been put on notice because the starting linebackers are going to be David Long and Andrew Van Ginkel. And Baker's going to, I think, move into more of a rotational type role. He might be out there for the first snap, but when you look at snaps, Van Ginkel is going to be playing a lot. I think Jerome Baker will be on this football team, but you can see a clear transition that Andrew Van Ginkel's really seizing an opportunity here. You're seeing a lot of influence from Vic Fangio, though, right? I felt Andrew Van Ginkel signed here and was probably going to get more money on the open market, but came back here probably after a conversation with Vic Fangio. You see them make moves. One negative thing I'll say, and this is a player that I boasted about, is Deshaun Elliott. I am underwhelmed.
Yeah.
He's more of a box player anyway, but I need to see him make some plays. I don't think Deshaun Elliott's a lock for this roster. I need to see more from him to make him on the roster. Right now, Elijah Campbell to me is the number 2 safety behind Brandon Jones over there. And I like that. If I'm wrong about Deshaun Elliott, so be it. I like a football coach and a team that lets the best players play and make the team. So this defense, man, it's going to be fun all year.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see it hit full stride until Ramsey's back because he's just such an impactful player. But man, one thing, if you're out looking for a Dolphins jersey, people always ask who to go. Jaelan Phillips, Javon Holland, or go pay homage to good Ken Griffey Jr., go get number 24, Cam Smith. There's just so many players that you can like that are on this team, man. I think you share those sentiments. This defense has a chance, and that's actually why I think the offense will be what they were last year and be more consistent with it. The defensive jump, I think, is just going to be outrageous, and it's not just the talent. Vic Fangio, that's a great maestro to have back there, man. It's fun. It's a fun team. It's a really fun defense.
All right, guys, I got to get out of here because the wife is blowing me up because she's got to go out to dinner. So I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. JT O'Sullivan, former NFL quarterback and owner of the quarterback school. He will be on here. We'll break down Tua Tagovailoa, Mike White, Skylar Thompson, and the quarterback situation for the Dolphins. Check that out tomorrow, 5 p.m. Then on Saturday, we'll be live reacting at 4 p.m. to the Houston Texans and Miami Dolphins day game. Quickly, I was asked by Gene whether Cam being out there getting work with the ones because he's in the red jersey, is that potentially because they want to see him start opposite X? I think if Cam was healthy, he'd be right in the thick of that battle with Noah Igbenogany to start opposite of X right now. So we'll see how it all works out. But anyways, guys, I got to get out of here. I will see all y'all in the next one. Until then, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day, baby.